right. Good to see you, Justin, and good to be here, everyone. All right. Well, the market rally, we're due for a pause. Are we going to get one? I think is the question. So we're going to be talking about the market action today. And Justin, what are the stocks we're going to be highlighting?
Well, we're going to look at some good, some not so good. We're going to take a look at Coinbase because Bitcoin was certainly having a great day today. And we also got one of the home builders showing a nice little move with Dreamfinders Homes. That's DFH. And we'll end with the Magnificent Seven that aren't looking so magnificent with Alphabet and Apple.
Okay. Well, we'll take a look at those stocks, but first let's take a look at the major indexes today. So down on the day, but no bad losses here, Justin. We actually had small caps up. The Russell 2000 up 0.6%. The Nasdaq down 0.1%. The S&P 500 off by about 0.4%. That was the worst decline today, and the Dow down by 0.2%. So your thoughts, starting with the Nasdaq.
Well, of course, there's a few things that we have to just keep in mind here on the economic front. We saw how some of these pullbacks that we've had, granted, they've only been like a day or two, but they have been a lot of centered around what's happening with the interest rates, right? So there was the Fed, there was the CPI, there was the PPI, and now this week we have PCE. That's the Personal Consumption Expenditures. That's going to be coming out on Thursday. So I think this is something that we have to watch. Earnings. Look, we've had just such a strange earning season, and with a lot of the earnings kind of going down and ramping down now, we've got a lot of things that are kind of we're going to be losing the catalysts. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Is this the time where we're going to be going a little bit more sideways, a little bit more choppy? That's kind of what we expect. And look, at the NASDAQ, we're kind of bumping our heads up at this 16,000 level. This is very close to where we were back in 2021 when we peaked. So that's something that we have to be just very cognizant of, an area of resistance that's seeming a little sticky. S&P 500, it's 5,000 for that level that we're looking at there. And, it got hit a little bit harder today, but it's still holding above that 5,000 level. And then we also have, as you mentioned, the Russell 2000 getting back above that 2,000 level. And especially if you look at the weekly chart on the Russell 2000, the small cap index, that 2,000 level is an area of resistance that goes back quite a ways. It's hit its head on it a number of times. So the big question is, okay, we're back above 2,000, but can we stay there?
Yeah. That is a very good question, Justin. And now that we're above it, we also have those two other short-term peaks. But it does seem like if we could get the Russell out of this range, that would be great for participation. The NASDAQ on the verge of all-time highs. Do you think maybe more money could come off from the sidelines if we get some things in gear here? Or is the overall tone out there, we're getting extended, now's not the right time to be making new buys?
Yeah, I think that there is an argument to be made. Again, you're coming in pretty soon to April, which is tax season, so there might be some money that kind of, hey, we gotta put it aside for taxes, and that does lead to some seasonal weakness in the months ahead. But that money, it's going to have to find a home somewhere. Now, with low interest rates, where you weren't getting much return on it, that was one thing. I was like, well, where else am I going to put my money? Am I going to get like 0.01% from my savings account? But with 5% from CDs and some other avenues that you can actually get some return, that's been a little bit more attractive. But I think that a lot of that money from the sidelines could potentially re-enter the market if there is a little bit of a pause here for those people that maybe were a little bit slower to get in. So, and let's not forget, there is a lot of money on the sidelines still. So I think that could be a boon for the market. But look, we've been running for a while. It's very due for a pullback. So far, as I mentioned, we've only been getting like 1 or 2 day pullbacks. That's really not enough to reset things. So maybe a little bit more of a serious, even if we come down to the 50-day moving average line for some of these indexes, I think that would be a good thing. And it would allow for more of these stocks to base, flatten out, and potentially give us new opportunities.
Now let's talk about some stocks, shall we? Crypto, definitely in focus today, Justin. So And it wasn't just one stock. It was really all of the
Oh yeah,
crypto plays
right,
moving.
exactly. Take your pick because there was plenty. And remember, we don't just have stocks to choose from now. We have a whole host of ETFs that we can choose from. So if we can take a look at IBIT, for instance, so IBIT, I mean, that's a good representation of what was going on with Bitcoin. We got above 53,000 for the first time for Bitcoin price, not the ETF, of course, but since November of 2021. So that's again getting back into those new high territories, getting into areas that we haven't seen since November of 2021. That's a nice thing. And Coinbase, to just bring up a single stock that is benefiting here, Coinbase had a nice move today, along with a lot of other Bitcoin related stocks. This was up 16, 17% by the end of the day. And what we had here before was we had this potential breakout that just didn't quite work, right? So it got above that 187.39 area. It had to do a little bit more work. And I actually didn't mind that at all because it really comes straight up from that 114 all the way up to 187. That's a pretty big move in just a matter of days. So the fact that it kind of did that last pullback, I think was a good area. Today was a potential entry, to get back into it. Ideally, that would have been done earlier rather than later because of the move that we had. But we have a stock of the day on this. Harrison Miller wrote a great piece on it. A lot of people were asking, with Coinbase, I mean, if the ETFs are out there, are people still going to use Coinbase? Well, guess what? A lot of the ETFs are using Coinbase as their custodian. So there are some interesting things going on with this play. It's always going to be going with Bitcoin, but it's certainly has some extra things that are making this one special. So I do like this. It kind of reminded me, and I'm not sure if you can jibe with me here. If you go back to 2009, yeah,
For
it kind of
sure.
reminded me of like Baidu. If you go back to 2009, go to
Right.
the weekly chart too.
To
Um, you know,
2009.
yeah, if you just do 2009 and you go to the weekly chart, you can see how Baidu there, you had this really strong move in 2007 right up to that previous peak, and then you took a little bit of a break. So I feel like Coinbase taking this break was important. And also, let's just go ahead and bring up Booking too, BKNG. It was called Priceline back then, but it also right there in 2006, you can see where it had that strong move up, but then it had that last pause. So I think what Coinbase is doing here, it just kind of reminded me of these two stocks, and I like what it did. So as much as it's a little bit tough getting something that's up 16, 17% in a
Mhm.
day and going with it, I like the precedent that I'm seeing, and looks interesting.
Very interesting there, Justin. And get ready for me to leave you momentarily, but just keep talking. Let's go to our next stock, and you may lose the chart here, but here's DFH, Dreamfinder Homes. This comes after the breakout from Toll Brothers last week, now seeing another breakout in the home builder group.
Yeah, and so one thing that you have to be keeping in mind with Dream Finders is this one is a little bit less liquid. It only trades about 381,000 shares on average. It's a $37, $38 stock. So it's below our normal threshold of 20 million average dollar volume. You get that by just multiplying the price by the average daily volume to get that average dollar volume. So it is a little bit lower on the liquidity side, but I really like the structure here. You can see how this base formed right on top of that previous base. So that's a plus. And it's also not alone here. We've got other members of the group. If you look at ITB or XHB, both of those are looking interesting. So I think it's great that you're having other members that are participating. Toll Brothers was probably one of the first ones to kind of break out in this area. That one's looking strong, but Dream Finders, I could say arguably you could look at that 34.48 area. That is, I've kind of drew a line there straight across. Yeah, right there at around 34.48, a little bit lower. Yeah, you kind of had a break from this downtrend. So either you did a downtrend or straight across for a potential early entry. And let's notice also some volume coming into this. So I think that's a plus. But let's just go ahead and look at Toll Brothers real quick. TOL. That's another one to just be observing because I think this one is also looking strong. And I do have a position in this, but it did have earnings last week that acted as a catalyst driving this one forward. For DFH, You do have earnings coming up on this one, so be aware of when that earnings comes up, because another member of the group, DHI, when it had its earnings, DR Horton, really took a tumble. So that's one that you just have to be aware of, that earnings aren't quite done yet. They're ramping down, but they aren't quite done yet. So be aware of those earnings still when they're coming up.
So all the Magnificent Seven stocks aren't magnificent anymore. Here's a look at Google, down 4.4% today.
Yeah, so I mean, look, the AI is such a big deal, and you're going to have your winners and losers. And so, while Google is looking to really be a dominant player in AI right now, there are some questions as to their competitive edge here. So. The 50-day moving average line is one of the lines in the sand that I really look at and say, okay, if you can't hold the 50-day moving average line, especially in a market this strong, there might be a problem. I mean, and just look at what's happened to Alphabet's relative strength line. It's really kind of coming down. This one just hasn't been participating. So I think we've got a lot of issues that we've got to be aware of. The Magnificent Seven, this is Alphabet's been a big member of this, and it just isn't looking as magnificent anymore. So be aware when you're looking at some of these stocks. The relative strength is going to tell you a lot about who those winners are.
Okay. And Apple, that's another one. We'll just throw this one in here too.
Yeah, I wanted to just, again, because it's not Google alone that's suffering here in terms of the Magnificent Seven. Alphabet really seems like it's having a problem kind of getting its mojo back. Here again, you see a relative strength line that is been in a big downtrend here lately. So with all of this move from the tech area, Apple just hasn't been participating. And now this one got below its 50-day moving average line previously. I mean, it's been a few weeks that it's been below that 50-day moving average line. It's now kind of living below that line, and it's starting to bump its head up against it. So that's always a bad sign. And we were talking with David Ryan, who's going to be on IBD Live tomorrow, and he was saying this might actually be something that looks like you could short it. So it's very interesting that with such a tech-heavy move in so many places, that you could have these two big behemoths struggling so much.
All right. Well, we'll have to see what happens. But for those who are picking the right stocks, it does seem like there's plenty of ones that are working. So looking at these signals on the charts and relative strength, that can definitely go a long way. All
Absolutely.
right. Well, that's it for today, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. And as Justin mentioned, we'll be back in the morning on IBD Live. And we will see you then, investors.com/IBD Live for all the details on that. Thanks again for watching, and we'll be back here tomorrow.